So I'm about to share with you a sermon illustration, and I really like this one. So let's watch it first, and then we'll say just a few words about it.
John Howarth runs the skeena between Jasper and Prince George year-round. He's been a railroader for nearly 30 years and has operated locomotives for 22 of those.
My interest in railway kind of goes back to when I was a little kid, because I grew up in a railway town. And my dad was an engineer. He worked for CN Rail at the time, and he drove steam engines. And when I was a little kid, I kind of always wanted to do that, and that's what I ended up doing. One of the earliest things I remember about the train is the steam engines that used to go roaring out of Jasper. One of our favorite things to do was to go out and put a big line of grease on the rail ahead of the steam engines, and they'd come out of Jasper with their heavy loads, and they'd be just pulling hard. If you can imagine, it'd be and they'd hit that grease and the wheels would just go and they'd be stalled. They couldn't do anything, so they'd have to back up. One time we were, hidden behind our rock laughing and thinking we were all clear. We all stood up, and my dad was right in front of the rock, and he promptly took me over to a willow bush and cut a switch and switched me all the way home.
So I love that. For a couple of reasons I love that. The first reason is he just described what those that we would call troublemakers in the church do. They put grease on the track intentionally, so that when the church is moving along nice and smoothly, it will hit the grease on the track and not be able to make progress and move forward. Now, the grease comes from the devil, and it's an activity of the demonic world to stifle the spiritual growth of a church and the unity of a church. It is sabotage by grease on the tracks. Now, the second reason I love that illustration is because this man received punishment for his misbehavior by his father. And that was back in the days when fathers would use the rod on their male children. Now, I was never an advocate for the rod to be used on females, but growing up a male, I got the rod on me, except it wasn't a switch, it wasn't a stick cut from the bush. It was my father's belt. Now, we have forsaken this in today's world, and I must say, if you look around, you probably are seeing the price that we are paying because we have forsaken the rod. Now, I did an entire series on discipline in many directions, so if you just go to my playlist, you can type in discipline, and lots of videos should pop up for you. Discipline in the church, discipline in the home. But I just love that illustration of grease on the tracks. And that's exactly what these workers do in the church, who work against the Holy Spirit. Thank you for watching. End of video.